Welcome to the Canadian Business Quarterly podcast, where we speak with Canada's most influential industry leaders on the business and economic development issues taking place across the country. You can stay up to date with all of our content, including our publications, newsletters, and podcasts by visiting www.thecbq.ca and clicking on subscribe.
Today's guest is Jutta Purchase, CEO of German Canadian Care Home. Jutta, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us the story of German Canadian Care Home.
So the story of the German Canadian Care Home began in 1965 when a group of German immigrants founded the German Canadian Benevolent Society with the goal of building a care home for seniors in Vancouver, BC, British Columbia. They achieved this goal in a relatively short period of time, and in 1969, the doors of the German Canadian Care Home opened to its first residents. The care home initially operated as a private care home, and the residents who were living at the care home were all mostly German immigrants. So the care home operated until 1978, when the society decided to join the provincial long-term care program. And this was an economic decision that resulted in some more stability around funding for the operations and occupancy as well. So from that point forward, the care home the residents of the care home were admitted by the health authority, which meant the population of the care home became much more multicultural. And today we have 132 residents, and they speak 16 different languages. So that gives you an idea how many different ethnicities we have among our residents. Throughout the years, the care home underwent many renovations to adapt to the increasing care needs of our residents. For example, we widened doorways to rooms, we installed ceiling lifts in resident rooms, and we enlarged the dining rooms to accommodate residents who were using wheelchairs.
Okay. And so what does the organization do in a more practical sense day to day?
So the care home employs about 200 staff. They make everything work. This includes care aides, nurses, support services staff, so food services, housekeeping, and laundry. There is a recreation team. There are physiotherapists, occupational therapists, rehab aides. There's a maintenance team. They look after the building. And then there's a leadership team that run the operations, that manage the operations. And myself, I'm the CEO, and I report to a board of directors. And that's a group of volunteers coming from different backgrounds. So the care home provides a number of services to residents, primarily assistance with daily living, so helping residents get dressed and do daily activities. Then there are nurses who provide nursing care and clinical care. And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, the housekeeping services, there's laundry services, food services, as well as recreation activities. So basically everything that you would do in your daily life, it's the same here in the care home. We also get quite a bit of support from families who come and visit and socialize with residents, and a large number of volunteers. We have about 80 volunteers who come in and visit residents and help with events and activities and so on.
Okay. When we originally spoke, there was this concept through innovation development under a service model, which is described as Comfortzeit. Do you want to just take us through effectively what that is?
So it's called Comfortzeit. Zeit is a German word for time. And Comfortzeit is the name of our care model. The name describes the focus of all our activities. So that includes care and services, the staffing model, and the environment and the design. So the Comfortzeit, how it plays out in reality, it's a shift of focus from a medical view, where we typically ask what is best for you, or when we say this is best for you, to a more social humanistic view, where we say what can we do to make you comfortable. And this Comfortzeit model of care was developed in conjunction with our redevelopment plans for a new care home. And we have not been able to fully implement it yet because we are still in our existing buildings. We're not yet in the new buildings. But it is quite a shift from how we used to do things to how we want to do things. And just to give you a few examples, so with a staffing model, for example, in a traditional care home, there are departments, and each department provides a very specific service. In the Comfortzeit model, staff works a lot more like a team, and they also are what we call multi-skilled. So they provide a number of services to a resident. And this is made possible by a different environment where residents live in households. So they live in a small unit, a small number of residents in one household that has a kitchen, that has laundry facilities, and the staff is in those houses providing services to the resident. And it's different from the traditional model where you have a centralized operation with a centralized kitchen, a centralized housekeeping, centralized laundry. In the Comfortzeit approach, it's not like that. It's we're moving the staff into the households closer to the resident.
All right. So, in addition to Comfortzeit, where else do you see your differences in service compared to others who are in the sector?
So the German Canadian care home has always had a desire to innovate. And many years ago, they participated in a pilot project to move, that was looking at moving residents who were living with dementia into a regular seniors home. It wasn't common practice at the time, but it's now quite common in every care home. We also always wanted to learn from others, and the German Canadian care home was the first care home, long-term care home in British Columbia to seek the National Accreditation Award, and we have maintained that since 1978. We continue looking for opportunities to put new learnings into action. And I refer again to our plans to redevelop. When the decision was made to work towards the complete redevelopment of the care home, the board and the leadership team immediately decided that they would develop the vision for the care home and the care model first before designing the building. So form follows function principle. So this deliberate and methodical approach to doing things is what separates us from many other Canadian care home models.
Okay. You've already alluded, and I think you just spoke about this, but you've also been working on the new care home project, I think for about 6 years, and the project is, from what you tell me, currently waiting for final approval. Why don't you take us through, what this is and what this means?
Right. Yeah. So this is very exciting. It actually started a bit longer. It started about 10 years ago when the board and leadership realized that the buildings were getting older. And the other thing that was happening is, as I mentioned earlier, the care home had undergone numerous renovations, but it came to a point where we realized that further renovations were no longer possible, that we really reached the end and maximized everything we could do with the existing buildings. So we started, the decision was made that this is what we would be working towards. And we spent quite a bit of time researching innovative care models around the world. So we did research online. We looked at models in Asia, Australia, and Europe. And we also visited several care homes in Europe that had come to our attention as having implemented a new or an innovative way of providing care to seniors. So out of all this learning, we created a vision for the building design and for the operational model. One of our challenges was that we are in Vancouver, so we are in an urban center, and a lot of these innovative care homes that had implemented a village model or a small house model were in rural areas, and they literally had built little houses that were connected on a large property. So this wasn't possible for us, and we needed to find an example that was similar to our circumstances, and we did find that in Europe, where an organization had built a so-called vertical village. So it was a multi-story building, and they had these households integrated in this multi-story building. And that was very inspirational to us. And so, like I said, out of all these learnings and the things we saw and conversations we had with others, the design for the new care home evolved. About 6 years ago, the health authority issued a request for proposal. So we were able to participate, and we were successful in negotiating an agreement with the health authority for the new care home. Unfortunately, the planning was paused during COVID as everybody's attention turned to fighting this virus, but resumed shortly after. And at that point, we had to revise and update some of the design and also the cost for the project. And that's completed now. And we are just waiting now to get the final approval from the health authority.
Okay. We're starting to wrap up. So do you want to let me know sort of what challenges the industry as a whole is facing at the moment?
Yeah. So our biggest challenge has been probably for the last year, the lack of staff. It's just really difficult for us to recruit staff, particularly professional staff like nurses. We've lost a few staff during the pandemic. Many people working in long-term care who were close to retirement chose to retire. Then casual staff who were available to us, many of them left the industry, and that was due to the fact that they were restricted to work in one site at the time, and they were just not getting enough work hours. So as we were coming out of the pandemic, we needed to add more staff, and that has been a challenge. Then the other part is the staff burnout. The staff who are still here, they work incredible hours, lots of overtime, and that is occasionally leading to staff burnout as well. I think that is really currently the one issue that is impacting us the most, and has led to a number of other challenges.
Okay. And as we begin to wrap up, is there anything else you might like to share?
Long-term care is and will continue to be a much needed service. The residents who come to us really are at a point where they need this level of support, and they deserve to feel comfortable and respected and safe. It's really time to leave the institution behind and offer them an environment that is comfortable and enjoyable, and offers them still some independence and enjoyment during this time in their life. I also want to emphasize that the commitment and the dedication of staff who work in long-term care is really extraordinary, and it's these relationships that staff have with residents that makes working in long-term care a really rewarding experience. I want to thank CBQ for inviting me to share the work of the German Canadian Care Home with your audience.
Yeah, of course, you're more than welcome. Jutta, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
This has been a production of the Canadian Business Quarterly, a division of Romulus Rising Proprietary Limited. All rights reserved. You can stay up to date with the Canadian Business Quarterly, including our publications, newsletters, and podcasts by visiting www.thecbq.ca and clicking on subscribe.